Andre Washington was 38 years old, and for 3 years he had been leaving before sunrise and coming home after midnight, 80 hours a week, to pay down the mortgage on the home he shared with his wife Brianna, and build a life she kept telling him wasn't enough. He never complained. He trusted her completely. He was 3 months from paying off their second mortgage and 2 weeks from surprising her with a weekend trip where he planned to tell her everything was about to change. Then a canceled work order sent him home early on a Thursday afternoon. The silver BMW parked behind his garage didn't belong to any neighbor. The smell of jerk chicken drifting through his back door wasn't Brianna's cooking. And the man standing at Andre's kitchen island, wearing Andre's robe, pouring Andre's bourbon, laughing with Andre's wife, had no idea who he was standing in front of. Neither did Brianna. What Andre Washington did next would cost them both everything they thought they'd already won. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The alarm went off at 4:30 a.m. Andre Washington was already awake. He had been lying in the dark for 20 minutes, running the day's schedule in his head the way other men ran miles, methodically, without complaint, one step at a time. Inbound freight from the Memphis hub. 2 drivers calling out sick. The Hargrove account audit that needed to be cleaned before 9 a.m. or the whole morning would cascade into something ugly. He sat up. The other side of the bed was cool and smooth, undisturbed. Brianna had gone to bed early again, or maybe not early. He'd come in after midnight, and she was already asleep, her back to the door in the particular way that had stopped feeling accidental about a year ago. He dressed in the dark. He did not turn on the light. By 5:15 a.m., he was at his desk at the distribution center, a large metal building off Route 9 that smelled like rubber and cold concrete, and the particular exhaustion of people who started their shifts before the sun considered it a reasonable hour. 20 staff, 3 loading docks, a routing software that worked beautifully when it worked and turned catastrophic the moment it didn't. Andre moved through the floor with the unhurried authority of a man who had earned it the slow way, not through volume or performance, but through being right, consistently, over time. His crew knew the difference. New managers came in loud, making noise to cover uncertainty. Andre came in quiet, and the noise stopped on its own. He ate a protein bar over a scheduling report at 7:40 a.m. He took his coffee black. He did not sit down again until 11. This was Tuesday. Tuesday was the same as Monday. Monday was the same as the Friday before it. It had been this way for 3 years. The number he kept in the back of his mind, the one he returned to when the hours got punishing and the drive home felt longer than the drive in, was 3 months. 3 months, and the second mortgage was gone. 3 years of brutal hours, of missed dinners, and cold side of the bed, and texts he answered from parking lots at midnight. And in 3 months, the foundation would be solid, real, paid for in full. He had something else held back, too. Something he hadn't told Brianna yet. The regional director position had been on the table for 6 weeks. More responsibility, yes, but 40-hour weeks. Normal hours. The kind of schedule that left room for a person to actually exist inside their own life. His supervisor had been patient. Andre had asked for time to think it over, and his supervisor had given him the time without pushing, which Andre respected. He wasn't ready to tell Brianna yet. He wanted to do it right. He had a weekend trip planned. 2 months in the making. A small inn on the water, 2 hours south. The kind of place with no televisions in the rooms, and a restaurant that served breakfast at any hour you asked for it. He had a speech rehearsed. Not formal, not practiced in a stiff way. Just the things he wanted her to hear. That the hard part was almost over. That things were about to change. That he had been present in the ways that mattered even when he couldn't be present in the room. And that from here forward, he would be both. He wanted to see her face when he said it. He didn't notice the wine glass the first time. It was a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks back. He'd come home before midnight for once and gone to the kitchen for water. And there it was, rinsed and returned to the upper cabinet on the left side. He and Brianna kept the wine glasses on the right. He stood there for a moment, looking at it. Then he put it where it belonged and went to bed. The guest towel was a Saturday, the ones folded on the rack in the downstairs bathroom. The stiff ivory ones his mother had given them as a housewarming gift. The ones Brianna insisted on keeping for company. One of them had been used and rehung, slightly uneven. Andre straightened it without thinking about why it needed straightening. The cologne was harder to dismiss. Faint, just a trace near the downstairs bathroom door. Something cedar and expensive that was not his. He stood in the hallway for a long moment. He thought about it. He decided he was probably imagining it. Or maybe one of Brianna's colleagues had stopped by. Or maybe she'd been testing something at a department store and the smell had followed her home. He was good at deciding he was probably imagining things. Her texts had changed, not all at once. Gradually, the way a tide goes out without announcing itself. A year ago, they were warm, specific, small, funny observations about her day. Now, they were logistical. Running late. Don't wait up. Did you pay the water bill? Short. Flat. Efficient in a way that left no room for anything extra. When he was home, her complaints had a rhythm. You're never here. You don't see me. I have needs you just don't think about. He absorbed each one with the guilt of a man who believed her unhappiness was a problem he had caused, and therefore owed it to her to fix. He was working on fixing it. 3 more months. The trip. The speech. The promotion. All of it was coming. She just had to hold on a little longer. On a Thursday afternoon, a shipment delay out of Memphis collapsed his on-site schedule by 2 hours and sent his afternoon into a controlled rearrangement of priorities. By 1:30 p.m., the crisis had resolved itself in the efficient, undramatic way that crises resolved when the person managing them had seen worse. He texted Brianna. Schedule cleared up. Heading home early. You need anything? He waited. 3 minutes. 5. 10. No response. Yoga, he figured. She went Thursdays now, had mentioned it a few times, a studio downtown, an instructor she liked. She probably had her phone in her bag. He slipped his own phone into his pocket and pointed his car toward home. Windows down. The early afternoon light cutting long and golden across the highway. He thought about the trip, about the inn and the breakfast at any hour and the way the water looked from that part of the coast in the early morning. He thought about her face. He turned onto their street at 2:17 p.m. The silver BMW was parked behind the garage, half-tucked, nose angled away from the street. It sat at a particular angle, close to the back wall, deliberate in its position. The angle of someone who knew the layout. Someone who knew which parts of the driveway were visible from the street and which parts weren't. Andre stopped his car at the foot of the driveway. He looked at the BMW for a long moment. Then he pulled in slowly, parked, and cut the engine. He went in through the back door. The smell hit him before anything else. Jerk chicken, warm bread, the deep, slow smell of a meal that someone had made with time and care and nowhere else to be. It filled the whole house, rich and unhurried, the kind of cooking that didn't happen at the end of a long day. It happened in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, when the afternoon belonged to you. Music drifted from the kitchen, low and easy, something with a slow groove that he didn't recognize. Then he heard her laugh. He stopped walking. It was Brianna's laugh, the real one, the loose one, the one that came from somewhere unguarded. He had not heard that laugh in over a year, maybe longer. He had heard the polite version, the social version, the version she produced at dinner parties and family gatherings. But this one, open, unhurried, completely unperformed, this was the laugh she used when she forgot to manage herself. He stood in the back hallway and listened to it. Then he rounded the corner into the kitchen. The man was standing at Andre's kitchen island. He was tall, well-built, wearing Andre's robe, the thick navy one, the Christmas gift from his mother 2 years ago, the one that still lived on the hook behind the bedroom door. The man wore it open and easy, like he had worn it before, like it fit the shape of his afternoon. He was eating from Andre's good plates, the white ceramic set they kept in the high cabinet, and only brought down for company. He had one hand around Andre's bottle of 15-year bourbon, tilting it over a glass with the comfortable pour of a man helping himself to what was already his. Brianna stood at the stove in a silk wrap, her hair loose around her shoulders. She was smiling at something the man had just said, her posture completely open, her body relaxed in a way Andre had not seen in years. Nobody moved. The song kept playing. Brianna's face drained. All of it. All at once. The color leaving her like a light going off. Her hand stopped where it was over the stove. She did not speak. The man's expression moved. Surprise first. Quick and involuntary. Then something shifted behind his eyes. A rapid reassessment. Calculations running. And then it settled. His chin came up slightly. The corners of his mouth did something that wasn't quite a smile but was close enough. He looked Andre over, top to bottom, unhurried. The way a man looks at something he has already decided doesn't require serious attention. Andre looked at his wife. He held her gaze for a long moment. Long enough for her to understand something was different. Long enough for the particular quality of his stillness to reach her. Then he said, very quietly, "Get him out of my house." The man set the bourbon glass down on Andre's kitchen island. He raised one hand, a patient, diplomatic gesture, like he was managing a misunderstanding in a boardroom. His voice was smooth and calibrated, the voice of a man who had used it to talk his way out of difficult rooms before. "Andre," he said, like they were old acquaintances, like the name was something he'd earned. "Let's not make this something it doesn't need to be. I think if you and I just—" Andre turned and looked at him. The man stopped. Andre did not raise his voice. He did not move toward him. He let the silence sit for exactly as long as it needed to sit. And then he spoke with the flat, even precision of someone who has already made his decision and is simply communicating it. "You're standing in a man's house," he said, "wearing a man's robe, eating a man's food. I need you to understand who the man is." The man left. He gathered himself with a deliberate slowness, a performance of calm. But he left. The back door opened and closed. 30 seconds later, the BMW's engine turned over in the driveway. The music was still playing. Andre looked at his wife. "How long?" he said. Not a question. A demand for information, delivered like one. Brianna opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. She started somewhere in the neighborhood of denial, "It's not," and then appeared to realize, looking at him, that the particular face he was wearing had no use for that. She shifted. "It wasn't serious," she said. "It got out of hand. It was complicated." "How often?" he said. She looked at the stove. "What did you tell him about our finances?" Her eyes came back to him then. Something moved through them. Not guilt. Something closer to calculation. She turned it into indignation with a speed that told him she'd been holding it ready. "You want to talk about finances?" she said. "Andre, you're never home. You haven't been home in 3 years. I've been alone in this house. What did you tell him about our finances?" "I have needs. I have a life that needed—" "Brianna." She stopped. And then, in a voice that was quieter, but carried everything she had been building toward, she said it. "You were never here anyway." Andre picked up his keys from the counter where he'd set them. He did not slam the door. He did not say another word. He walked out of the kitchen, through the back hallway, and out into the afternoon air. He got in his car. He drove. He didn't know how long he drove or which streets he took. He just drove, moving through the city on automatic, until the roads opened up and a parking lot appeared on his right, empty and wide, and he pulled in and stopped the car and turned off the engine. And then it was just him and the silence and the full, crushing weight of what he had just walked into. The parking lot was empty except for him. The engine ticked as it cooled. Outside, the afternoon light was going orange and flat, stretching long shadows across the cracked asphalt. Andrei sat with both hands in his lap and stared at nothing and let it come. It came, the image of Patrick at his kitchen island, the robe open at the collar, his robe, the one his mother picked out, the one he'd worn on Christmas morning 2 years ago when life still looked exactly like what he thought it was, the pour of the bourbon. The way the man's chin had lifted when he looked Andrei over, making his assessment, reaching his conclusion. The particular quality of that look, not fear, not shame, just the bored calculation of someone who had already decided this was a problem he could manage. Brianna's laugh, the real one, the loose one, coming out of the kitchen like it belonged there, like it had been living there all along, in the middle of Tuesday afternoons, while Andrei was running overnight schedules and eating cold protein bars over a desk 40 miles away. You were never here anyway. He pressed the back of his head against the headrest and closed his eyes. The grief was not abstract. It was physical, a pressure behind his sternum, a specific heaviness in his hands, a tightness at the back of his throat that he breathed through slowly and deliberately. He did not fight any of it. He had spent enough time around men who fought what they felt until it found another way out, and he had no interest in that outcome. So he sat with it. He let it be exactly as big as it was. He thought about the weekend trip, the hotel reservation, the restaurant he had found 3 months ago and bookmarked and never told her about. The speech he had been refining in quiet moments. Things are changing. I'm changing them. We get our life back now. He had believed that speech was going to mean something to her. He had believed it the way a man believes in a thing he has worked toward for years, without ever questioning whether the person beside him still wanted to arrive at the same destination. He sat with that too. And then, not right away, but gradually, the way a room comes into focus after the lights come up, his mind began to do what his mind did. It organized. He did not ask it to. It just started, the same way it started every time a crisis arrived at work. Not with panic, not with speed, but with a slow, deliberate inventory of what he knew and what he didn't. The house was in both names. That was the first fact. His income was the dominant income, by a margin that wasn't close. Brianna's part-time position at the interior design firm paid enough to cover her car note and some personal spending, and that was about the sum of it. He had helped her get that job through Marcus Webb, a contact he'd built over 8 years in logistics. Without him, she didn't have that either. Without his income, the life they were living in that house, the mortgage, the utilities, the good bourbon, the ceramic plates they brought down for company, none of it held. He was 3 months from clearing the second mortgage. 3 months. Then the things he didn't know. He didn't know how long it had been running. He didn't know what she had told Patrick about their money. And the fact that she had deflected that specific question twice was not something he was willing to set aside. He didn't know whether anything had already moved. Accounts, assets, anything. He didn't know the full shape of what he was inside. And that was the thing. That was the only thing that mattered right now. Moving without full information was the only way to lose. He understood that the same way he understood logistics. You do not reroute a shipment until you know every variable that caused the delay. You do not make the call until you have the picture. He pulled out his phone. He scrolled to a number he knew by memory and pressed call. It rang once. "Andrei, I need you, brother," Andrei said. A pause, not hesitation. Kurt Maddox did not hesitate. It was the pause of a man reading a tone and understanding immediately what category of call this was. "Name the time and place," Kurt said. That was all. Andre ended the call. He sat for a moment. Then he scrolled again. His mother answered on the second ring. "Andre." Her voice was warm and wide awake, even though the day was getting late. "I need somewhere to sleep tonight," he said. "I'm not hurt. I just need the door." A brief silence, the kind that meant she heard everything he hadn't said. "The door is open," Diane said. "Drive safe." He put the phone down on the passenger seat. He looked out through the windshield at the empty parking lot, at the orange light going gray at the edges, at the long quiet of a Tuesday evening with no one else in it. He was not going to file anything tomorrow. He was not going to call Patrick. He was not going to say a word to anyone outside of Kurt and his mother. He was going to get everything there was to get. Every fact, every number, everything they thought he would never know. He reached forward and started the car. Then he drove to his mother's house. The diner smelled like coffee and bacon grease and the particular warmth of a room that opens at 5 in the morning and never really cools down. Andre got there first. He took the corner booth in the back, the one with the wall on two sides and a clear line to the door, and ordered black coffee and did not look at his phone. Kurt arrived at 7 on the dot. He was a broad man, Kurt Maddox, with a calm face that gave nothing away and steady eyes that took in a room in about 2 seconds flat. He slid into the booth across from Andre, set his laptop bag on the seat beside him, and signaled the waitress with 2 fingers for a refill he hadn't ordered yet. She brought it anyway. He had that kind of face, the kind that made people want to be useful to him. He looked at Andre. He didn't say, "How are you doing?" or "Man, I'm sorry," or any of the other things people say when they don't know what else to offer. He just looked at him the way you look at a man you've known since you were both 22 and scared in a country that wasn't yours, with full attention and no performance attached to it. "Tell me everything," Kurt said. So Andre did. He laid it out in order. The signals he had dismissed, the driveway, the back door, the smell of the food, the robe, the bourbon, the look on Patrick's face, the confrontation, the questions Brianna deflected, the line she landed on at the end. He spoke in the same even tone he used to brief his team on a cascading logistics failure, not because he wasn't feeling it, but because this was how he processed, and Kurt understood that. Kurt had always understood that. Kurt listened without interrupting once. He held his coffee cup with both hands and listened until Andre was done. Then he opened his laptop. "Give me 48 hours, he said. They met again at the same booth 2 days later. Same corner, same bad lighting, same coffee that had been sitting on a burner since before either of them arrived. Kurt placed a manila folder on the table between them. He did not open it immediately. He let Andre settle. "Patrick Osei," Kurt said. 41. Real estate developer. Mid-sized operation. Does mostly mixed-use commercial. Good reputation on the surface. Moves in circles where money and visibility matter. He opened the folder. And he's been busy. The first page was a document printout. A state LLC filing. Andre looked at it and felt the specific cold of something he had suspected, without being ready to name. Osei Holloway Development Partners, LLC. Filed 4 months ago. 2 listed co-founders, Patrick Osei, Brianna Holloway Washington. Andre read her name twice. Not because he didn't understand it, because he needed a moment to let it be real. "Initial capitalization," Kurt said, his finger moving to a line near the bottom. $14,000. He let that land. Then he opened the folder further and set down a bank document, not from the LLC, but from Andre and Brianna's joint savings account. A transaction history. 8 weeks of withdrawals. Small ones. 400 here, 600 there, 900 once. Never the same number twice. never large enough to trip an automatic alert. Each one perfectly sized to disappear inside the noise of ordinary spending until you put them all in a column and added them up. $14,000. 8 weeks. Planned down to the increment. Andrei sat very still. He had worked 3 back-to-back overnight shifts in February to cover a contract shortfall. He remembered because he had called Brianna from the warehouse at 2 in the morning, and she had answered sounding half asleep and said she missed him. He remembered being grateful for that. He had driven home at 6 a.m. feeling like the sacrifice was worth something. She had withdrawn $400 that same day. She wasn't just having an affair, Andrei said. His voice was level. Just an observation. Just a fact being placed into the correct category. No, Kurt said. She was building something. Andrei nodded once. He looked at the documents for another moment, then looked up. Kurt reached into the folder a second time. He placed a photograph on the table. A woman, mid-30s. Natural hair pulled back. Wool coat. A leather bag over one shoulder. The shot was taken from across the street, clean and clear, taken by someone who knew what they were doing. She was stepping out of the entrance of a downtown condo building on what looked like a Sunday morning, squinting slightly against the light, completely unaware she was being photographed. She looked composed. She looked like someone who knew exactly where she was going. Camille Brooks, Kurt said. 37. Licensed financial advisor. She's been with Osei for 3 years. 6 weeks ago, she was his date at his firm's charity gala. Her name's in the event recap on their website, photograph and everything. By everything I can find, she thinks she's in an exclusive relationship. Andrei looked at the photograph for a long moment. He did not feel contempt for her. What he felt was something quieter than that. Recognition, almost. The particular quality of a person who does not yet know the thing that is about to change everything. How deep does his pattern go? Andrei asked. Kurt's expression shifted, not into surprise, but into the particular flatness of a man delivering a number he had hoped would be smaller. I'm still pulling thread, he said. But this isn't the first time. Andrei held his gaze for a moment. Keep going, he said. He closed the folder. He left 2 bills on the table for the coffee. He parked in the driveway 20 minutes later, sat for a moment with the engine off, the folder on the passenger seat, the afternoon light the same ordinary light it always was. The house looked exactly like it always looked. He picked up the folder. He got out of the car. He walked to the front door, put his key in the lock, and went inside. Dinner was quiet. Brianna had made pasta, his favorite, the one with the lemon cream sauce she only pulled out when she was trying to say something she couldn't find words for. The table was set properly. Candles lit. She had changed into a soft blue dress, and her hair was down, and she moved around the kitchen with a careful, gentle energy that Andrei recognized immediately for what it was. A performance, patient and practiced and aimed directly at him. He ate. He asked about her day. He listened to her answer. He offered nothing that could be used against him and took nothing at face value. When she touched his hand across the table, briefly, tentatively, her eyes searching his face for a signal, he did not pull away. He also did not give her the signal she was looking for. After dinner, he helped clear the plates. Then he told her he was going to check on his mother. That Diane had been a little under the weather. Brianna said of course. She said to send her love. She watched him from the kitchen doorway as he picked up his keys, and her expression was the most honest thing she had shown him all evening. Uncertain, calculating, trying to read the room and finding nothing to read. He drove to his mother's house. The porch light was already on. Diane Washington opened the door before he could knock, which meant she had been watching for his headlights. She was in her housecoat and reading glasses, and she looked at him the way she had been looking at him since he was a boy, like she could see every part of him at once and was not afraid of any of it. "Come inside," she said. I made tea. The kitchen smelled like chamomile and the faint cedar of the candle she kept on the windowsill above the sink. The table was the same one from his childhood. Solid oak, 4 chairs, a small gouge near the edge from the time he was 11 and tried to fix his bicycle inside in January. He sat in the same chair he had always sat in. Diane set a mug in front of him and sat across from him and folded her hands and looked at him steadily. "Tell me what you know so far," she said. He told her. The LLC, the withdrawals, Camille Brooks, Kurt still pulling the thread. Diane listened without flinching. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she took a slow breath and set both palms flat on the table. "I need to tell you something," she said. "And I need you to let me get through all of it before you say anything." Andre nodded. 2 years ago, she began, I was having lunch with Carol. You remember Carol, from my old firm, at that Italian place on Marsden Street, the one with the green awning. She paused. I saw Brianna. Andre was still. She was at a table by the window, sitting across from a man I didn't recognize. I almost went over. Diane's voice stayed even, but her hands pressed a little harder against the table. I didn't. I don't know exactly why. Some instinct told me to stay where I was and just watch. She had watched for 20 minutes. The man across from Brianna was well-dressed, she said. Confident. The kind of confident that comes from a life without much friction. But it wasn't the man she remembered. It was Brianna's hand. She reached across the table and she put her hand over his, Diane said. Not quickly. Not like a hello. Like someone who has been doing it for a long time and doesn't think about it anymore. She had left before Brianna could see her. That same evening, she mentioned casually to Brianna on the phone that she had been in that neighborhood for lunch. Brianna had said, "Oh, how nice," and asked about Carol, and never mentioned the restaurant. Never mentioned the lunch. Never offered a name. Diane looked at her son. I noticed, and I filed it. There were 2 visits after that. Once at Thanksgiving, once the following spring. Both times Brianna had stepped outside to take a call. Both times she returned to the room with her face arranged too carefully, slightly too composed, slightly too returned to normal. The way people look when they have just done the work of looking like nothing happened. I spent 30 years watching people manage their expressions on the witness stand, Diane said quietly. I know what that work looks like. She had said nothing. She had no proof, only instinct and a hand across a restaurant table and a face rearranged 1 beat too deliberately. She had told herself she could not wound her son on instinct alone. She had told herself she might be wrong. I have thought about that decision every single day since Thursday, she said. Andre reached across the table and covered her hands with his. You did right, he said. With what you had. He meant it. He held her hands until she looked at him and could see that he meant it. You did right. Diane pressed her lips together and nodded once. She was not a woman who cried easily, and she did not cry now, but she held on to his hand for a moment longer than usual before she let go. The attorney, Andre said. Patricia Wren, Diane said, and her voice steadied immediately. The paralegal in her surfacing with the clean efficiency of a woman returning to solid ground. 26 years in family law. I worked across from her on 2 cases years ago. She is meticulous. She does not lose asset disputes. She paused. I called her Friday morning. She has a Thursday opening, 9 o'clock. Confirm it, Andre said. Diane nodded. She picked up her mug. He picked up his. They sat together in the kitchen that smelled like chamomile and cedar, at the table with the gouge near the edge, and did not need to fill the silence with anything at all. He hugged her at the door. She held on for a moment, not dramatically, just with the particular grip of a woman who had been waiting to do that since Thursday. And then she let him go and told him to drive safe. He drove home. He told Brianna he needed space tonight. That was all. She looked at him carefully from the hallway, searching his face the way she had searched it all through dinner, and he gave her nothing to find. He took a pillow from the linen closet and went to the guest room and closed the door. He lay in the dark on top of the covers, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling. He went over everything he knew. The LLC filing, the $14,000. Camille Brooks, stepping into Sunday morning light outside a building she didn't know was part of a lie. His mother's hand over Brianna's in a restaurant window 2 years ago. A face rearranged one beat too deliberately in the doorway of his own living room. 2 years. At minimum. He stared at the ceiling and let it all sit exactly where it was. No rushing it. No reaching for the next move yet. Just the full weight of it. Measured and accounted for. Thursday was 4 days away. He closed his eyes. The days after Diane's kitchen had a particular texture to them. Quiet. Careful. Almost normal. If you didn't know what normal had been built on top of. Andre came home from work at reasonable hours. He ate the dinners Brianna made. He asked about her day and listened to her answers and kept his face exactly where he needed it to be. Open enough to seem present, closed enough to give her nothing. He slept in the guest room a second night, then a third, and when she asked if they could talk about that, he told her he just needed a little time, that he was processing, that he wasn't going anywhere. All of it was true, just not in the way she understood it. Brianna moved through the week like a woman who had decided the situation was recoverable and was putting her full ability into recovering it. She made his coffee the way he liked it, strong, 2 sugars, and left it on the counter before he came downstairs. She cooked real dinners, the kind that took time. Jollof rice on Tuesday, salmon with roasted vegetables on Wednesday. She found a recipe he had mentioned once, maybe 2 years ago after a work dinner, a slow-braised short rib, and spent a Thursday afternoon making it from scratch. She set the table properly, lit a candle. She was performing the marriage she had quietly abandoned. Performing it well, Andre noted, with real effort and real attention to the details that would matter most to someone who was grieving and needed to feel wanted. The problem was that Andre was not grieving. He had moved through grief in a parking lot 4 days ago and come out the other side into something else entirely. He ate the short rib. He told her it was excellent. It was. She offered quiet apologies in soft installments, nothing direct enough to be pinned down as a confession, nothing specific enough to be used as an admission, just carefully worded gestures of remorse, designed to lower his defenses without raising her liability. I know things haven't been right between us. I know I've made mistakes. I want to do better. Each one delivered with eyes that searched his face for softening. He received each one with a gentle nod and gave her nothing back. She thought she was managing him. He could see her think it. The phone was the thing that confirmed it. Brianna had always kept her phone near her. Most people did. But the angle had changed. Screen tilted down on the table during dinner. Carried into the bathroom. Turned face down on the nightstand in a way it hadn't been before. Small adjustment. The kind a careful person makes when they are having a conversation they don't want seen. Andre said nothing about it. He just watched. On Friday morning, she was in the shower. Her phone sat on the bathroom counter. She had taken it in with her, he noticed, set it on the edge of the sink while the water ran. He walked in to get his watch from the hook behind the door. The screen had lit up with an incoming message. He picked it up. The contact read, P.O. The preview showed the tail end of a thread. He scrolled up just far enough, 30 seconds, maybe 40, and photographed 3 separate exchanges with his own phone, before setting hers back exactly where it had been. He looked at the photographs in the hallway. The thread was clear. Brianna had told Patrick that Andre was devastated, but quiet, that there had been no legal threats, no attorney mentioned, that she believed he was withdrawing, breaking down inward, she wrote, the way he always does when things get hard. She told Patrick the situation was under control, that Andre was, in her own precise words, Broken up, but manageable. Manageable. He put his phone in his pocket. He walked downstairs and made his own coffee. He listened to the shower running and thought about the word. Manageable. That evening he sat at the desk in the guest room after Brianna had gone to bed. He opened his laptop and navigated to a cloud account they had set up years ago. A shared backup system Brianna had asked him to configure after she lost photographs from a vacation, a task he had handled in 20 minutes, and neither of them had thought about since. He had thought about it once, briefly, sitting in Kurt's diner booth. Now he opened it. The account held what cloud backups hold: photographs, synced files, and the archived contents of connected email accounts. Brianna's was still linked. She had forgotten. He had not. He found the thread in under 10 minutes. 14 months of emails between Brianna and a woman named Sonia, a mutual friend from college who had moved to Atlanta 4 years ago, far enough away to be confided in safely. Andre had met Sonia twice. Both times she had been warm and easy and seemed to like him fine. He read the thread from the beginning. It took 40 minutes. The first emails were unhappy in the way people are when a life they chose has stopped feeling like the right choice. Restless, dissatisfied, full of the language of someone who has begun to quietly separate her identity from the thing she shares with another person. Brianna described feeling invisible, feeling like a supporting character in a life that was supposed to be hers too. She described Andre's hours, his exhaustion, his absence. She wrote about it with a pain that felt real. Andre read it carefully and let it sit. Then Patrick appeared in the thread. 8 months in. The tone shifted. The restlessness sharpened into intention. She described meeting him, the early conversations, the way the attention felt. She described the particular pleasure of being chosen by someone who had choices, and she described it without guilt, or rather, with guilt repackaged so thoroughly as self-preservation that it had stopped looking like guilt at all. The emails built, month by month, into a picture so complete it could have been submitted as a document. The LLC was in there. The withdrawals, she knew exactly what she had done and knew that she had done it carefully, describing the increment amounts with satisfaction. She described the future she was constructing. She described Andre's nature, his emotional discipline, his tendency to go inward, and she described it as a liability she had already accounted for. Then the email from 7 months ago, dated the 3rd Sunday of March. He read it 3 times. In it, Brianna described a conversation she'd had with Patrick about the house, specifically about the challenge of Andre's legal claim on the equity they had built together. Patrick had raised the possibility, framed as strategy, outlined with the smooth practicality of a man who had thought about this carefully, that if the separation could be positioned correctly, if Andre's emotional response could be amplified rather than managed, there was a real possibility he would simply step aside. That a man devastated enough, disoriented enough, convinced that fighting would only extend his pain, might willingly concede rather than endure a prolonged legal process. Brianna had written back the same day. That's exactly how he works. He processes privately. He doesn't fight out loud. If he believes the situation is already decided, he'll try to take it with dignity. That's always been his thing. Make him feel like it's already over, and he'll act like it's already over. He sat with that for a long time. She had not just planned to leave. She had planned to use his grief as a door she could walk through, carrying everything on her way out. She had mapped him, studied the way he moved through pain, and built a strategy around it. She had taken the truest thing about him, the dignity with which he absorbed hard things, and turned it into a mechanism of extraction. He closed the laptop. He got his phone and his jacket, and walked downstairs and out through the back door. He sat in his car in the dark driveway and called Patricia Wren. She picked up on the second ring. "Mr. Washington." "I have more," he said. I want to walk you through all of it before Thursday. She said, "Go ahead." He laid it out in order. The LLC, the $14,000, the text thread with Patrick, the email chain, 14 months, Sonia's address, the March email specifically, the language about his nature and how they planned to use it. He spoke without heat, without editorializing, without a single word that wasn't a fact. When he finished, Patricia Wren was quiet for a moment. "Forward everything to the secure link I sent you," she said. "All of it. Tonight, if possible." "Already done," he said. Another brief pause. Then, "Thursday at 9, Mr. Washington. Don't discuss any of this before then." He said he understood. He ended the call. He sat in the car for another minute, looking at the back of the house. The kitchen light was on. He could see the shape of the table through the window. The same table where Patrick had stood in his robe, at ease, helping himself to everything. He put his phone in his pocket. He went back inside. He made a fresh pot of coffee. He sat down at the kitchen table. Brianna came downstairs a few minutes later, drawn by the smell or the light or some sixth sense she had developed about reading his movements. She was in her robe, hair loose, and she smiled at him carefully across the kitchen. The smile of a woman who had decided things were moving in the right direction. Andre wrapped both hands around his mug. He said nothing at all. April was already there when he arrived. She had taken a table near the back of the coffee shop, away from the windows, her hands wrapped around a mug she had clearly been holding for a while without drinking from. She was wearing a gray cardigan, and her hair was pulled back simply. And when she looked up and saw Andre walk through the door, something in her face did the thing faces do, when a decision that has been made privately is about to be spoken out loud. Andre ordered a black coffee at the counter and carried it to the table. He sat down across from her. "April." "Hey." She looked down at her mug, then back up. "Thank you for coming." "Of course." She nodded slowly, like she was confirming something to herself. She opened her mouth, closed it, then started again. Not from the beginning she had rehearsed, but from somewhere in the middle, the way people do when the prepared version stops feeling like the true one. "I knew something was wrong," she said. "I've known for almost a year, and I didn't say anything. I need you to know that I know that." Andre said nothing. He held his coffee and listened. "About a year ago, Thanksgiving weekend, your mom's birthday dinner, the one at Marcus's place." She set her mug down. "Brianna brought someone. She introduced him as a professional contact, a developer she was doing some work with, Patrick." She said the name plainly, without dramatizing it. "I watched them for almost an hour." April's voice was steady but quiet. The way he touched the back of her chair when he walked past, the way she laughed at things he said, the way she looked at him when he was talking to someone else. She paused. "I know what professional contacts look like. That was not that." "Did she know you noticed?" Andre asked. "I don't think she cared." April said it without bitterness, just precision. Brianna has always believed she's the smartest person watching any room. She doesn't always notice who else is watching. The coffee shop was quiet around them. A woman typed something at a laptop near the window. Low music came from somewhere overhead. "I didn't say anything," April continued. "Not to you, not to her, not to anyone." She looked at him directly. "She's my older sister. And the way we've always worked, the way I've always worked inside this family, is that I defer. I support. I don't push back on Brianna." She paused. "I'm telling you this because I want you to understand it wasn't indifference. I knew what I was doing by staying quiet. I just kept choosing the easier thing." "April, I'm not finished. Not sharp. Just certain. At that same dinner, I went to get my jacket from the back bedroom, and I passed the hallway. Brianna was on the phone. She had stepped away from the group. April looked at the table for a moment. I only caught part of it. She was talking about timing. She said she wanted to make the transition by next spring. That's the phrase she used. Make the transition. She said it like it was something that had already been decided. The room was quiet. Andre did not move. "I didn't understand exactly what she meant," April said. "I told myself it could have been anything. Work. A project." She lifted her eyes. "I understand it now." Andre looked at her for a moment. Then he said, and he meant it fully, "Thank you." It was not the formal kind of thank you. It was the kind that lands in the chest. April seemed to feel it. Her shoulders came down slightly, like something she had been bracing against had finally let her go. She picked up her mug, set it down again. She started to rise, then she stopped. She looked at him one more time, standing there with her jacket in her hands, and what she said next she said carefully, not as a rehearsed line, but as a commitment she was making to herself as much as to him. "Whatever she asks me to say when this gets legal." A pause. "I won't say it. I want you to know that." Andre held her gaze. "I hear you." April nodded once. She pulled on her jacket and walked out. He sat for a few minutes after she left. The woman at the laptop was still typing. The music overhead had shifted to something slower. He drank the last of his coffee, which had gone cold without him noticing. Then he paid the check, went to his car, and made 3 calls. The first was to Kurt. He told him to finalize the documentation package, the LLC filings, the withdrawal records, the bank timeline, the background on Patrick's prior arrangement. Kurt said it would be ready by end of day Wednesday. The second was to Diane. She picked up before the second ring. "Thursday's confirmed," she said, before he could ask. 9 o'clock, he said. "I'll be there." The third was to Patricia Wren. He told her to prepare to file. She said, "I'll have everything ready." That evening, he came home to find dinner already on the table. Brianna had made pasta, something light, something careful. And she had set out the good placemats, the ones she brought out when she wanted the evening to feel like an occasion without naming what kind. They ate together. She talked about her week. He listened and responded briefly and ate his food. After he washed the dishes, he went upstairs, showered, and got into bed. He closed his eyes. He slept through the night, fully, deeply, without interruption. For the first time since the afternoon he had turned into his driveway and seen a silver BMW parked at the wrong angle behind his garage. Patricia Wren's office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown, and it looked exactly like the office of a woman who had spent 26 years winning. Not loud about it, not decorated to impress, just precise. Clean lines, organized shelves, a desk surface with nothing on it that didn't need to be there. A woman who understood that clutter was a form of confusion, and that confusion was the enemy of outcomes. She was already seated when Andre was shown in. 60-something, silver-haired, reading glasses low on her nose. She stood to shake his hand with the grip of someone who meant it. "Mr. Washington." She gestured to the chair across from her. "Let's get started." She walked him through the petition first. The language was formal and precise. Grounds for divorce, asset enumeration, the marital property claim on the house. Then the LLC documentation, the incorporation filing, Brianna's name on it, the capital contribution traced back through the joint account withdrawal records Kurt had assembled with the kind of care that made each page feel like a closed door. Then the fraud dispute package, 8 weeks of small withdrawals, the specific amounts, the pattern, the total, $14,000. Andre read each page carefully before he signed anything. Patricia did not rush him. She answered 2 questions he had about the asset division timeline, answered them directly and without padding, and then set the signature pages in front of him in the correct order. He signed where indicated. She gathered everything into a folder and said, "I'll file this afternoon." Andre nodded. He shook her hand again at the door. He rode the elevator down to the lobby and walked out into the morning with the particular feeling of a man who has just done something that cannot be undone, and is completely at peace with that fact. The next morning was a Friday. Andre was already at the bank by 9. He sat across from the fraud department's intake officer, a careful, measured man named Gerald, who wore a tie and took notes in a legal pad with sharp handwriting, and he placed Kurt's full documentation package on the desk between them. Gerald read through it. He took his time. He asked 3 clarifying questions. Andre answered each one. By 10:15, the formal dispute on the $14,000 had been opened and logged. His direct deposit was redirected to a new individual account he had opened 2 days prior. His beneficiary designations had been updated across every instrument Gerald's department could touch. Andre thanked him and stood. He was in his car by 10:30. At 11:04 a.m., a process server walked into the lobby of the interior design firm where Brianna Washington worked part-time. He asked for her by name at the front desk. A receptionist led him down a short hallway to a glass-walled conference room where Brianna was mid-presentation. Laptop open, samples fanned across the table, 2 colleagues on one side, and the client she had been cultivating for 4 months on the other. The process server knocked once, opened the door, and asked if she was Brianna Washington. She was. He handed her the envelope, confirmed the delivery, and left. The room was quiet for a moment, in the way rooms go quiet when something private has entered a public space. Brianna held the envelope in both hands. Her 2 colleagues looked at the table. The client looked at her with the polite, careful expression of someone deciding whether to stay. Brianna set the envelope down beside her laptop. She finished the presentation. Or she tried to. She came home at 6:15 loud with fear, wearing the costume of anger. The door opened hard. Her heels hit the hardwood fast and sharp. Andre heard her from the kitchen, where he was already seated at the table. The same table, the same chairs, the same room where Patrick Ossie had once stood in his robe pouring his bourbon, with a folder open in front of him. "You want to do this?" She dropped her bag on the counter. "Fine. Let's do this. I will contest every single thing. The house. Andre, you cannot just—" She stopped, looked at him sitting there. "You have nothing. You have suspicion, and you have hurt feelings, and that is not—" Andre said nothing. He reached into the folder and placed the first document on the table in front of her. The LLC filing. Her name. Patrick's name. The date. She looked at it. He placed the second document beside it. The bank withdrawal records. 8 weeks. The specific amounts. The total at the bottom. Then the email thread. Printed, numbered, organized. 14 months of correspondence with a mutual friend. Her own words in her own phrasing, across page after page. He placed it all down 1 sheet at a time, and then he put his hands flat on the table, and he waited. The room was quiet. Brianna read. Her face moved through several things. Recognition, then calculation, then something that caved inward in a way that had nothing to do with performance. When she reached the last page, he spoke. "I know everything." His voice was level, unhurried. "I know when I found it. I know what it means legally. And I know," he touched the email thread, "that you and Patrick discussed using my grief to make me compliant. That you counted on me falling apart." He paused. "You planned for me to fall apart. I didn't fall apart. I paid attention. There's a difference between those 2 things, and you're about to learn it." Brianna tried remorse first. It came out fractured. She said she was sorry, that things had gotten out of hand, that she never meant for it to go this far. He watched her. She tried accusation next, said he had never been present, said the marriage had been dying for years, said he had driven her to this. He watched her. Then the tears came. Real ones, he believed that. And she asked him what he wanted from her. What would it take? "Nothing from you," he said. He closed the folder. He stood. "I'm staying in the house. I'm the co-owner, and that's my legal right. You should call an attorney in the morning." He picked up the folder. "That's everything I have to say tonight." He walked out of the kitchen and down the hall and out the back door. The back steps were cool. and the night was quiet. He sat with his forearms on his knees and the folder beside him, and he looked out at the dark shape of the yard. The tree his neighbor had planted the spring before, the fence line, the slice of street light cutting across the far edge of the grass. He wasn't angry, wasn't triumphant. There was no victory feeling, not the kind he'd imagined when he was sitting in that parking lot in February, trying to hold himself together. What he felt was something simpler than that. Still, certain, like a man who had carried something very heavy for a very long time and had finally set it down in exactly the right place. Kurt came back the following Tuesday. Same diner, same corner booth, same cup of black coffee going cold beside his elbow, while he laid everything out on the table in the order it needed to land. 2 prior relationships, both married women. Both involved some kind of shared financial arrangement, a business venture, a joint investment, something that gave Patrick legitimate access to money he hadn't earned. Both marriages collapsed. Neither woman pursued legal action. Kurt slid the documentation across, names redacted where he had agreed to keep them, but the pattern was plain. The timeline, the structure, the exit. Clean, quiet, consequence-free. Twice over. He built a system, Kurt said. He wasn't editorializing, just naming what he saw. He finds women with something to lose, counts on embarrassment to buy his silence. Both times it worked. Andre looked at the pages. He read each one slowly. He didn't account for a husband, he said. Kurt picked up his coffee. No, he did not. The conference room was on the 9th floor of a neutral professional building 4 blocks from Patricia Wren's office. Beige carpet, a long table, a window that looked out at the side of another building. Nothing about it suggested anything other than a routine business meeting, which was exactly the point. Andre arrived first. He sat at the far end of the table, folder closed in front of him, jacket on, hands relaxed. Patricia Wren sat to his left. She had 2 folders and a legal pad, and the expression of a woman who had sat in rooms like this more times than she could count, and had never once been the most nervous person present. Kurt stood near the door, not blocking it, just near it. Patrick arrived at 2 o'clock, which was the time he had been given. He came in alone, unhurried, in a charcoal suit that fit like it had been made for him. Because it had been. He glanced at Kurt without reading him correctly, then moved his eyes to the table and registered the layout in the smooth, practiced way of a man who is used to assessing rooms and deciding, quickly, that he is the dominant party in them. He looked at Andre. Andre did not stand. Patrick pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. He leaned back slightly, one arm resting on the table. Andre. He said the name the same way he had said it in the kitchen. Familiar. Offered without permission. Andre looked at him steadily. Let's get started. He opened the first folder. He did not raise his voice. He did not rush. He walked Patrick through each item with the same economy he used to brief his operations team on a logistics problem. Factual, sequential, complete. The LLC documentation entered into the divorce proceedings as a marital asset, subject to full equitable division. Brianna's name, the filing date, the capital amount traced back through 8 weeks of joint account withdrawals, the formal fraud dispute, already logged with the bank, already producing a paper record, and then the last item in the first folder. Andre placed it on the table and let Patrick read it. A formal complaint filed with the State Real Estate Licensing Board. Fraudulent use of marital assets in the capitalization of a real estate LLC. The complaint had been submitted 5 days ago. A mandatory conduct review had already been opened. Patrick's active development licenses were now under audit. Minimum 18 months, during which every institutional deal, every new investment, every significant capital relationship would require full disclosure of the open review. Patrick's expression did not break, but something behind it shifted. A small, precise recalibration. The expression of a man who has just realized the math no longer works in his favor. He opened his mouth. Andre held up one hand. "I'm not finished." He opened the second folder. He slid one item across the table. A printout of the charity gala event recap from Patrick's firm website. Patrick and Camille photographed together, mid-laugh, her hand on his arm. The caption named her. Beside it, a single printed page. Camille Brooks, licensed financial advisor. The name of her firm, her credentials, her professional profile. Patrick looked at the photograph. He did not look up. "She deserves to know," Andre said. "Not because I want to hurt her. She's not who I'm here about. But she has the right to make informed decisions about her own life." He paused. "I'm going to contact her. What you do between now and then is your business." The room was very quiet. Patrick's composure, the thing he had walked in with, the thing he had probably never once had to consciously maintain because it had always come so naturally, did something Andre had not seen it do before. It didn't crack. It didn't crumble. It simply vacated, the way air leaves a room when you open the wrong door. What was left was just a man, smaller than he had appeared in the kitchen, considerably smaller. He stood up. He did not ask to negotiate. He did not try to reframe. He picked up his jacket from the back of the chair, and he walked to the door and through it. Kurt watched him go. Patricia Wren made a note on her legal pad. Andre closed both folders. That evening, he sat at the kitchen table. His kitchen table, in his house, in the quiet of an evening that belonged entirely to him. And he typed the message to Camille Brooks. He kept it brief. He kept it respectful. He told her who he was and what had happened, and he attached the documentation so she could see it for herself, rather than take his word for any of it. He told her he was sorry she was learning this way. He told her she deserved better than being kept in the dark. He read it twice. Then he sent it. He set his phone face down on the table and went to wash his face. And when he came back, he made himself a cup of coffee. The good kind, the bag he kept in the back cabinet for when he actually had time to make it properly. And he stood at the counter and let it brew. His phone lit up 2 hours and 43 minutes later. He picked it up. 2 sentences. "Thank you for telling me. I'm ending it." Andre read it once. Then he set the phone down on the kitchen counter and stood there in the quiet with his coffee, in the house that was entirely, finally, his. The consequences did not arrive with noise. They settled the way weather settles after a storm, quietly, thoroughly, rearranging everything they touched without announcing themselves. No dramatic moments, no public unraveling. Just the slow, permanent weight of changed circumstances pressing down on the lives they had reshaped. Patricia Wren moved the divorce proceedings forward on her timeline, which was methodical and without sentiment. The LLC asset, now entered into the proceedings as a marital holding, could not be separated from the division calculation. The $14,000, disputed, documented, traceable through 8 weeks of deliberate withdrawals, sat in the record like a stone. The email thread sat beside it. 14 months of Brianna's own words, in her own voice, describing her own plan. The settlement terms that came back were not what Brianna had built toward. The house, the equity, the financial foundation she had spent 2 years quietly positioning herself to walk away with. Gone, or divided, or disputed, down to amounts that wouldn't carry her where she intended to go. The exit she had engineered with such care had delivered her somewhere smaller than the life she left. She called April on a Thursday evening. April answered. She listened to all of it, the version Brianna needed her to confirm, the shape of the marriage as Brianna had come to describe it, the things she would need April to say if asked. She listened without interrupting, the way she had always listened to her older sister, patient, attentive, giving her the full space to finish. Then she said no. No speech. no list of grievances, no performance of moral authority. Just the word, offered quietly and without apology, followed by two things she said she needed Brianna to hear: that she was sorry for how hard this was, and that she had her own thinking to do about how long she had stayed silent when she shouldn't have. It was the most honest conversation the two sisters had ever had. Brianna did not call again for 2 months. Their parents learned the shape of it, the way families always do, through the geometry of legal proceedings and the things that cannot be contained once they are in motion. Brianna's father called her once. Whatever was said in that conversation, she shared it with no one. Her mother called Andre. He took the call standing in his kitchen, one hand resting on the counter. She told him she was sorry, that she meant it, that she did not know how to say anything more useful than that. Andre told her he appreciated it. He told her she didn't need to carry any of it. His voice was even and warm and completely genuine, because he was not performing grace. He simply had no quarrel with this woman, who had loved her daughter and missed what was happening, and was now holding the weight of that the way parents do. The call lasted 4 minutes. It was enough. At the design firm, nobody made an announcement. Nobody had to. The fraud dispute was a matter of record, and records have a way of becoming ambient knowledge in small professional environments, passed in the particular silence of people who know something and have agreed, without discussion, not to say it directly. The client Brianna had been presenting to when the envelope was handed over, quietly, moved their account to another firm 3 weeks later. The email was polite and offered no explanation. It didn't need to. Brianna was not fired. She was sidelined in the ways that matter, the accounts that count, the clients with real budgets, the work that builds a career, and left in place for the work that doesn't. She showed up every day. She did what was asked of her. She survived it. But surviving is not the same as growing, and Brianna had wanted very badly to grow. Patrick's licensing audit moved slowly, the way regulatory processes always do, costing money and attention at a steady rate that had no clean endpoint. He was in a new relationship within 2 months, someone he met at an industry event, composed and attractive, who didn't know yet what she didn't know. But the room Patrick moved through was measurably smaller. The 2 development projects that had quietly withdrawn their participation did not return. The calls he expected to receive stopped coming in the volume he was used to. Word had moved through the professional network the way it always moves, not in announcements, but in the slow, permanent recalibration of who trusts whom and why and how much. He was still there, still presenting well, still performing confidence in tailored suits. But the architecture of the life he had built, the institutional relationships, the social credibility, the carefully maintained impression of a serious man living a serious life, had shifted in ways that would not shift back. 14 months after the parking lot, Andre signed the regional director paperwork on a Friday afternoon. 40 hours a week. A title he had earned without shortcuts. A schedule that belonged, for the first time in 3 years, mostly to him. He drove home at 3 o'clock on a weekday, with nothing chasing him. Home was a renovated townhouse in a neighborhood he had chosen alone, furnished alone, arranged according to no one's preferences but his own. His mother's photograph sat on the bookshelf beside the window. The kitchen was stocked with food he actually wanted to eat. The couch faced the television at an angle he had moved twice before deciding it was right. Kurt came on Sundays. They watched football and argued about things that didn't matter, and ate too much. And it was, Andre had quietly decided, one of the best standing appointments in his life. Diane came the first Saturday of every month. She brought food every time despite everything he had said about his own cooking being perfectly adequate. He had stopped arguing. She was always right. April texted every few weeks. Not about Brianna, about her own life. Small things she was figuring out, Observations that were more her own than they used to be. Andre always wrote back. He was glad she had reached out. He was glad she had chosen, when it mattered, to stop pretending. He thought sometimes about the parking lot. That Thursday, in February, the fading light. The full weight of it pressing down on him in the silence of a car going nowhere. The moment before the decision. He thought about how close he had come to doing what they expected, to falling apart in the specific, useful way they had planned for, to handing both of them the version of himself they had already prepared to use. He thought about what would have been left of him if he had. The anger was gone, had burned through clean and complete a long time ago, leaving nothing behind that poisoned anything. What replaced it was not forgiveness. He had no interest in that transaction, no debt to settle in that direction, but something more durable. The knowledge of exactly what he was capable of when he stopped apologizing for it. He had worked 80 hours a week for 3 years to build a life for a woman who was quietly building a door out of it. He had watched her plan to walk through that door and leave him with the wreckage. He had given her none of it. Now he worked 40 hours a week. He slept through the night. He took his mother to dinner on her birthday and stayed until she told him to go home. On a quiet Friday evening, the good light came through the windows he had chosen himself. He had nowhere to be. He owed nothing to anyone. He sat with that for a moment. Andre Washington was, finally, exactly where he had decided to be. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.